Hello, my name's David Clenzie and I'm a writer of historical fiction. My first series of novels, the Romulus Hutchinson Naval Adventure series, is based out of Liverpool primarily, which is, luckily enough, my home city. So that was easy enough to write about. The next series that I've been commissioned to write tells the story of the U-boat aces, Germany's U-boat aces across the two world wars. More tricky. So in order to try to kind of shape the characters and to learn more about the history and about the culture of the region that my characters lived in, I've come over to Germany on a research trip, and I'd like to invite you along with me. So a quick flight across from Gatwick to Hamburg, and then a long ferry ride to Helgoland first of all, and then later on I'm going to visit Bremerhaven, where there's an actual U-boat, and Wilhelmshaven, where there's a fantastic maritime museum. So do come along with me. So here I am, I'm in a place called Helgoland, or Helgoland in German. And I've come here because the novel I'm writing at the moment, the first in the new 5-part series about the German U-boat aces of the two world wars, the first novel is going to begin here on this island, in quite a remote location out in the North Sea. So I've travelled for 4 hours on a ferry from Hamburg down along the Elbe, and reached this place. And as I look around now, there's no sign of any of the land. It's Germany's most remote island, and it's got a fascinating history. During the First World War, this was the location of the main U-boat flotilla station that served to try to stop the blockade that the Royal Navy, the British Royal Navy, had in force against the Germans. So this is where the first novel starts. This is where my U-boat aces are based in that first novel for the majority of the time. So I've come here to see it for myself. This place has a fascinating history. So it was originally Danish, and then in the early 19th century it was taken by the British, and the British held this island for most of the 19th century. And then very late in the 19th century a deal was brokered between the British and the Germans, that the British would give the Germans this island in return for the Germans essentially turning a blind eye to the British taking Zanzibar off the east coast of Africa, which obviously is a much bigger island. So I rather suspect that the British had the better end of the deal there. As I say, in the First World War, this was a U-boat station when U-boats were a relatively new invention. After the Second World War, the British took the island back from the Germans for a while, and they decided that they didn't want the Germans to be able to station U-boats here ever again. So what they did was they tried to blow the place up, essentially. They wired up the biggest non-nuclear explosion that mankind's ever created, and it's actually shaped the landscape here. It didn't completely eradicate the island from the map, as some people suggested that had been the British intention, but it did make quite a mess of the topography. And for a few years afterwards, the RAF used the island essentially as a place to train in dropping bombs. So it's had a lot of bombs dropped in this place, and consequently all the buildings on the island are from the 1950s. So the place is kind of stuck in the 1950s, but with this extraordinary topography of bomb craters. So after a long day on Helgoland, I'm just making my way down from what they call the Oberland back down to the Unterland, and the dusk is setting in behind me. You might be able to hear a German male voice choir down in the town. And so, you know, after a day here, do I feel any closer to my characters? Definitely. These were real men, and about 112 years ago they lived here. I'm walking in their footsteps, and by coming here I almost feel a kind of permission to bring them back to life in a way through the historical fiction I'm writing. And I'm more excited than ever to get back and carry on writing it now. I always try and remember that my characters are or were real people, historical figures, and I suppose in a way I try to resurrect them just for a few pages. And I think the way to do that is to find the detail. You know, to talk about, in the First World War, to talk about cigarette tins and not cigarette packets, to have the correct name on the cigarette tin. That kind of detail I just think is so important, and that's where this kind of trip really comes into its own. I think once you start writing, as long as you've done the groundwork, as long as you've got the historical detail right, and you've done your research, the amazing thing is when you start writing and the characters sort of come to life by themselves. It's very much a different part of your brain from your conscious brain that creates them and creates the scenes, and that's what I really enjoy. When that happens, something clicks in, and suddenly the book's writing itself, I suppose. I don't want to give too much away at this stage, but the whole premise of the U-Boat Aces series is that it follows the key U-Boat aces right through from the beginning of the First World War to the end of the Second World War. And this first book that I'm writing now is very much focused on three key figures. I'm not going to say too much about who they are at the moment, but they're real historical heavy hitters who actually shaped their time through the service they provided at the helm of their U-boats, for good or ill. So it's been an extraordinary experience to learn about them in books. I've read a lot of books about U-boats in the last few months, but to come over here now and to really get a sense of the place where they lived, it just really helps to build a picture in my mind of the kind of people that they were and the kind of world that they lived in. And I think that's essential. Good morning, and wie geht's? And I've come here this morning to the town of Bremerhaven, which is on the German North Sea coast, to see a U-boat. And this is quite a special U-boat. It's from the very end of the Second World War, and it's special because it was one of the first type of U-boats that could stay submerged for an entire patrol. Of course, U-boats ran on diesel engines that could only be used on the surface, and these charged the batteries that allowed the vessel to be manoeuvred underwater. This is a bigger U-boat with bigger batteries, but it'd be fascinating to go and take a closer look. The most obvious thing you notice when you walk inside the U-boat is just how cramped everywhere is, and how every single space is filled with some kind of control or dial or valve. It's incredible that they could keep track of it all.
Das Boot taucht bei Dunkelheit auf. Der Gleitzug wird mit äußerst. Das Boot taucht. Man lässt die Konvoi mit der Kraft seiner Motoren nur schlecht zum Ordnen.
So there we are, after months of writing about U-boats. I've finally got to go inside one. This one is much bigger, of course, than the First World War U-boats that I'm writing about at the moment. But all the same, it still feels very cramped when you're in there. You can't imagine what it would be like to be in there for weeks and potentially months at a time. But fascinating to see inside. Hello, I'm in Wilhelmshaven, which is in Lower Saxony, which is right up again at the north of Germany on the North Sea coast. I've just had a great night's sleep, and this morning I'm going to visit the German Maritime Museum, where I'm hoping to find some relics of the lives of the U-boat aces that I'm writing about for the new series of historical fiction novels that should be out at some point next year. I think by getting to see some of the material of their lives, it's just going to help me to get a little bit closer to the characters. Another day, another U-boat, although this one dates from the 1960s and was actually in use right up until the 1990s. My word, this place is brilliant. There's so many exhibits and so many ships that you can actually climb aboard.
Damit der Kommandant oder die Schiffsführung 100% Schiffstechnik zur Verfügung. Alles so eine kleine,
For anyone with an interest in anything maritime or naval, this place is an absolute joy to walk around. You really should get yourselves over to Helgoland and enjoy it for yourself. Where else can you get this close to a missile launcher? What a brilliant place, and lots of nuggets that I can take from that, so a really useful day. Well, I think that about wraps up my trip. It's been an incredible few days, and I've learned an awful lot about the region and the history, and I've got lots to go back with to continue writing the book. It's just a case now of going back and getting it written. But I think it's vital to make the effort to do these kinds of things, to make sure the history is accurate, to make sure you're properly understanding the nuances of a place. And I guess it only remains now for me to go and get a beer.